Welcome back to the Business Immigration Benchmark. Today we're diving into the sweeping travel bans that hit the US on June 9th, affecting 19 countries, fully banning 12 and partially restricting 7. Today I have none other than Bernie Wolfsdorf, managing partner of WR Immigration, to help us understand what these bans are all about, how they will practically work at the border, and importantly, breaking down what to really take away as a global mobility leader for your company. Bernie, welcome back to the Business Immigration Benchmark.
Thank you so much, Laura. Wonderful to be with you.
So, I kind of want you to walk us through the overview of the ban. Now, we're recording on June 12th, so the ban has already been in effect as of Monday, June 9th. But can you help us understand, who's impacted for this 12 countries full entry ban and how does that work? And then how does the 7 countries under the partial ban, like, what does that all mean? Can you break it down for us?
Absolutely, Laura. So, um, firstly, we were expecting this. There were no great surprises. The New York Times had given us some clues several months ago, so we were anticipating it. I won't go through the full list of people subject to the full travel ban, but of significance, the fact that Iran is on the list, and that being the largest country, if you look at it from a totality, there are 500 million people subject to the ban, but there are numerous exceptions, and we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on some of those. So, in regards to the total ban, this fully suspends entry into the US of immigrants, that is, people coming permanently, and non immigrants, people coming temporarily, for nationalities of the 12 countries. So Afghanistan, Burma, Republic of Congo, Haiti, Iran, and then some of the old ones were there, Sudan and Yemen. So that is the full ban. I am going to discuss further the exceptions, but let's also briefly touch on the partial travel ban. So the distinction between the total travel ban and the partial travel ban. Now, the partial travel ban suspends entry into the US of people on visitor visas. That's the B1, B2. Um, and um, sadly, F1 students, M1 vocational students, and of some significance, J1 exchange visitor non-immigrants. And then it also reduces the validity of the visa. So a visa could be valid for 60 months, 5 years, or even 120 months, 10 years. And those have been substantially shortened for 7 countries. That list: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. Also of some significance, because I'm going to have to use the word so called reason for this was the Egyptian um, terrorist attack in Denver, quite horrific. And Egypt now is being screened for possible addition. But here's the important part of this: the administration has indicated that they will review the list impacted within 90 days, and certain countries may be added, others may be taken away. And of course, the important point, which everyone needs to note, is that if you had a valid visa as of June 2025, you are exempt from the ban. So that doesn't apply to you. So this is people in the future applying for these visas. Partial travel ban doesn't impact most of the work visa categories:
Right.
H's, O's, green cards, etc. It's simply non-immigrant visas in the tourist and student class. But for the total ban, and I am repeating myself to some degree, this suspends entry into the US of people from these countries who are coming in, and even though these aren't countries that, other than Iran, that um, provide a large number of immigrants and non-immigrants, these countries have over 500 million people. It's quite pervasive.
And so, Bernie, let me ask a question to clarify our understanding for listeners. So, if someone has, like you said, a valid visa that's been in the US, so maybe their visa was issued in January of 2024, they're Iranian and they hold an H-1B. These are, a profile of some of my clients that in theory are impacted. They're in the US, have an Iranian passport, born in Iran, and have a valid H-1B visa. Now, the thing with Iran is that generally when they were issued visas, it's only issued for maybe 60 days.
3 month single entry, where that's the problem, is the
Right,
Iranian reciprocity schedule is so limited. So they are, quite frankly, effectively stuck in the
right.
US, but nevertheless, if they are here. Now, there are also a lot of exceptions. And we,
Tell us about those.
yeah, sure. So, firstly, let's talk about dual nationals. And I'm not really going to get into strategies today, but if you are Iranian and you have a Grenada passport, then you are potentially exempt from the ban.
And is that because you could get the visa stamp in the,
Exactly.
alternate
Yeah.
citizenship
Yeah.
passport and then make the entry using that passport?
Exactly correct. I don't believe you could use the visa in your banned country passport, but if you have a second passport, and I'm sure the second passport industry is booming right now, then you can apply for the visa in that passport. Not that it's going to be a free ride. At the end of the
Sure,
day, place of birth, place of residence, you are going to be subject to extreme vetting, but at least the door is not 100% closed. So, and the big exception, which I really need to start off with, is if you are a US lawful permanent resident. So that is people who had obtained a green card prior to June 9. These bans don't impact you in any way. So that's something that people need to clarify, because I'm sure there's extreme anxiety. Those folks are okay. Again, I'm not sure they're going to be exempt from extreme vetting
sure.
by CBP at the airport, or actually the clearance process is based on the flight manifest, which is submitted prior to entry. So you will be screened. So lawful permanent residents are okay. Dual nationals with, of course, a passport from a non-restricted country are effectively exempt. And then, of course, the full range of diplomatic visas, A visas, A1, A2, NATO visas, G1, 2, 3, and 4, government organizations, World Bank, etc. Those folks are exempt. And another interesting category, which is athletes and coaches traveling for the World Cup next year, the Olympics, and other major sporting events. Now, that's not
Sure.
defined. What is other major sporting event? But, presumably, some of those amazing baseball players, maybe from, well,
Haiti.
I'm not from Haiti. There you are. Thank you so much. The Haitian baseball players probably exempt. So athletes and coaches, I always think about, well, what about family? Can I bring my spouse and child? Um, that's not clear. The other very important exemption is spouses, since I'm talking about family now, is spouses, parents, or children of US citizens applying for permanent residence in certain circumstances are also going to be exempt. So, understanding the exemptions is extremely important. I'm going to keep on going, if you don't mind, with the exemption list. Adoptions, of course, Afghan special immigrants, those are folks who assisted our military, special immigrant visas. Those are folks who've served in the US government working in consulate abroad. Interesting exception is immigrant visas for ethnic and religious minorities
Okay.
facing persecution in Iran, Christians and other minorities, people granted political asylum. I know that's a large number of people have been anxious. They're exempt, refugees already admitted, and individuals who are subject to the benefits of the provision of the Convention Against Torture CAT. That's the form of relief and removal. Now, another very broad sweep issue, the law is very, very clear that exceptions may be allowed on a case by case basis if travel would serve the US national interest. Now,
Right.
the
Okay.
problem, so this is the old, and I know you're very familiar with it because we had it during COVID, and the prior bans is the national interest exception. But the problem is, at least as of the present time, but we're only a few days since the ban. The problem is we don't know what the criteria are.
Right.
So, but we can look at past experience, right? I mean, I assume, Laura, you've done a lot of, we used to call them knees.
Yes, we
That's
did.
NIE, not KNEE. So the national interest waiver exception applies to all of these folks who are potentially banned. Well, actually banned, but I say potentially because they may be eligible for an exception.
Yeah, no, I think, the some of the really critical arguments that we had in the past was, the type of work which often boiled down to research. And again, we were doing a lot of these during COVID. So any industry that sort of touched COVID relief or COVID recovery was a strong argument. Obviously, that's not in place today. So we'd have to look for other opportunities to make those arguments. I think when we're thinking about global mobility leaders and navigating exceptions, I think it's going to be really tough. This is another really big challenge for companies to navigate, especially if you're recruiting or hiring talent internationally, or if you have international assignments around the world. Like if that's part of your organizational structure, the way you develop talent internally. The US travel ban, again, that just went into effect, is really going to put a big block on your ability to move people very quickly. Because as Bernie's mentioning, even if these folks are not subject to the ban, I think we can still see heightened vetting at consulates. And so that means slower times getting visas. And this is what we're up against. And then, especially if you are trying to sponsor a foreign national employee that's subject to one of these bans because of their country of birth. So that's just something to be really aware of. And if you're having meetings with your leadership about, the state of US immigration or the state of global mobility, this is certainly going to be topic number one that you're discussing in those leadership meetings is, the challenge to sort of move people, move ideas around the world. We're going to be slowed or stopped from entering the US.
So, Laura, I want to um, be a little contrarian today, if you don't mind. And what I am advising is, yeah, during COVID, the exceptions were very, very broad. But I like to look at the USCIS expedite criteria. Humanitarian concern, I believe,
Yep.
continues and is likely to be incorporated as one of the criteria for exceptions. And then, in terms of financial loss, obligation to perform under a contract. Now, I'm not saying these are the current exceptions, but
Sure.
this is what's been viewed in the past. Significant job loss, significant financial impact. So I think when we're talking about people who fulfill a critical function for a
Yeah.
company, I'm saying please reach out to us because my anticipation is that we will be getting a national interest exception for companies that need critical employees who are going to provide a vital function. And remember, this is temporary and subject to review. And I think that some of these countries got put on the list because in the past they would refuse to take their nationals back, and I think we're gonna find some of these countries changing their policies on accepting people. who've been removed, and that this is a highly fluid list. I mean, Laura, the New York Times had 42 countries on the list.
That's right.
We're
That's
down
right.
to 19. They're not quite the same countries. So I think this is a very fluid situation. And I'm hardly ever going to say no. I'm going to say, let me hear your case. Let me understand your facts. Let me understand the financial need and the benefit to the US, because a lot of these people that we see have outstanding qualifications and unique qualifications. I mean, companies don't want to go through the headache of transferring people in unless there's a specific reason. And that very reason is, in my opinion, going to form the basis of an exception in these yet undefined criteria. So it's kind of like at the moment we're driving, we don't have very good visibility, but based on the past and based on other criteria, I'm gonna remain moderately optimistic.
Thanks for that. Here's another sort of question for you. Given business have plans that were developed years ago, of moving product, introducing new ideas, whatever it might be. And so the pipeline of people, tagged to go to the US, were likely in the process months and months ago before this ban became in place. And so if you have, a foreign national that's subject to the ban that's working for your US company that needs to come in, maybe under a visitor because they're here to sort of do business strategy meetings, would you still send that individual to a consulate with an argument for national interest exception? Would you still advise we try that? Like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, how are you kind of advising in those
Yeah,
hypotheticals?
that's an excellent question, because here's something that's very, very significant. People who are subject to the ban are not prohibited from making an appointment and getting an appointment and going to the interview and presenting their case. So that tells me everything. At the end of the day, these folks are still eligible to participate in the system. And I know this is a little bit irritating, but I have to say it's going to be on a case by case basis.
Right,
And this is where lawyers become important in terms of um, elucidating the critical criteria that, I mean, you talk about people who've been planning, are there contractual obligations? Is there
right,
potential US job loss? I think at the end of the day, the US economy is still the overwhelming driver, in the fact that, we need to keep doing business. We need to keep, we mentioned the Congo. Now, I think the Congo, to my knowledge, is one of the countries other than Russia that has the rare earth materials that are absolutely critical in technology. So please bring me that case of bringing in a Congolese rare earth individual who is going to be providing these critical raw materials for the United States. I want that case because I think it's a winnable case. So be creative, be thoughtful, and focus on, I mentioned humanitarian. Yes, that's one aspect, but I think focus on critical business needs, and U.S. national interest is a very broad concept. But I would look at the Department of Commerce and see what are the criteria they have published, what are the issues regarded as of critical national interest, and starting there, I would present my legal arguments. So, unfortunately, this type of stuff is going to keep us very busy, as it did in the past.
yeah, certainly. No, and I like that you highlighted that visa appointments can still be made by countries that are still subject to the ban. And so, to your point, a case by case based analysis, whether to sort of proceed and how you're making that argument, if there is a valid argument, the strength of the argument for an exception to the travel ban. So, that's something to just keep in mind. And, for our global mobility listeners to be thinking about this and obviously working very closely with your immigration counsel to plan and develop those legal arguments for those cases and for the critical business need.
I also want to add, understanding the government's motivation here. Motivation is not restricting business or international trade. The government's focus is, and let's be clear, security concerns and public safety. So if you are able to highlight the fact that this person is not, let's assume it's a physician or medical researcher, at the end of the day, um, the focus would not only be the national interest, but the other side of the coin, which is this person is not a security concern and is not going to impact public safety. They're not coming here to engage in protests and anti government activities or put US citizens in harm. So let's always keep that in mind, that that is the justification. That is the focus. I'm not getting into the politics of it. I'm just simply looking at the rationale that the government is explaining in terms of public safety and security. So, number one, always have that issue front and center. And then number two, in terms of looking at the exceptions, focus on, in my opinion, what's the benefit to the US, job creation, avoiding job loss, um, significant contract obligations. So um, that's the framework. But as I say, we kind of driving with without too much visibility at this point. So I'm using my crystal ball for a lot of these. It's working quite well today, by the way.
This is helpful insights, and focusing on the security concerns and risk. Like, I think we're seeing that review at all consulates for all foreign nationals. And so, something we just discussed in our prep call was, if you have foreign national employees who have had any interaction with law enforcement and they're going for visa stamping, they're gonna come up with some challenges, and they may come up with challenges even to extend their status in the US. So, Bernie, tell us about, this gets kinda hairy because an interaction with a law enforcement officer in the US may not come up in your sort of employment application. Um, it may not have to be disclosed. It may come up and will likely come up if you travel for visa stamping these days. So, I don't know, I'm kinda lobbing you a tough one, but kinda can you
No,
help us think through this issue for global mobility leaders that are now gonna be kinda navigating what often is a very, personal issue that often doesn't come up in the workplace, especially if it's not required to be disclosed and there's all these different state rules, but now may come up because of immigration enforcement. So, tell us about that.
so I'm going to frame this issue in the context of when you make an application for employment, you are required to disclose these type of issues. As a matter of fact, um, some examples: reckless driving. So if you're like more than 30 miles over the limit, you were in a hurry to get to the maternity unit and you got pulled over. Um, that's reckless, and it could come up. Oh, I had a good one today where college kids were um, driving in a golf cart. There were too many kids in the golf cart. Everybody got arrested. They didn't even know who the driver was in college, and that kind of sounds like a college thing that would happen. And these kids would end up with that's interaction with law enforcement. And of course, if these things go to court, if they do go to court, they get immediately dismissed or they get sealed. I hate the word sealed. If one more foreign national uses the word sealed, I'm going to pull what's left of my hair out because I want it unsealed and I need the record because I need to prove that, you know, you were, there was no case. The government doesn't know this. And here's a little insider tidbit. You'll file an H-1B, and if there's interaction with law enforcement, you're required uh, to go in for biometrics appointment. No, you're not going to get arrested in the biometrics appointment. They're going to take your fingerprint. But the FBI does not provide information or have information on these what I call ridiculous things. So now you're in this predicament where something came up, but it's not in the FBI record. The government has no idea what it was
And that's
because it
because the
was
record was sealed? That's what
no,
you're
because it was
referring to?
trivial or
Oh, got it.
sealed.
Okay.
And now you have the obligation of showing that this was a innocuous event.
Right.
And expired driver's license. I've seen these cases, so many of these are um, automobile related, vehicle
Sure.
registrations. I mean, come on, small peanut stuff, but that's the overwhelming majority of interactions. Never be rude to the police officer. When they tell you to put your hands on the wheel or pull over, you follow the instructions, or you could well find yourself being arrested for virtually nothing. By the way, I'd once read that approximately 40% of Americans have been arrested. So, I mean, this happens when you're out there and not following all the rules. So I'm really telling people if the speed limit's 50, drive at 49. You're not an American citizen. And this is applying to LPRs as well. So just
That's
to
what we wanna
finish,
sort of talk about, yeah.
yeah, you're an LPR with a pot conviction from 20 years ago. But just finishing this thought, um, at the end of the day, what's absolutely critical is that the foreign national must have the final disposition. All right? This is the word, this is the magical word. I need the final disposition of that event. That may be a letter from an assistant DA. This may be a document from the court. But I need to explain to the government precisely what this was or is. And the foreign national needs to have this document on them and available. And I'm saying not on your iPhone, but paper, and possibly paper with a
Court
purple
seal?
or red, yeah, thank you, stamp, a seal.
Yeah.
So, you use the word visa stamping. I don't like the word visa stamping. It's a visa application um, where the authorities are under an obligation and will go through thorough vetting. And every interaction with the US government. That is, when you're applying for an immigration benefit with USCIS, applying for a visa at a consulate abroad, or entering through CDP, or even now the new one. I'm sorry, there are roadblocks within 100 miles of the border and elsewhere internally.
Yeah.
Carry your documents with you. You are required to carry your green card, not a picture, the plastic card, which always makes me nervous because if you lose it, good luck. It can take months and months to get a replacement. But we are living in difficult times, and it would be correct and appropriate to approach this in a preventive manner, um, not after the incident occurred, before.
Yeah, and I think, again, for global mobility leaders, this is a lot of individual issues that we were sort of talking about, like that the foreign national may have some sort of interaction with law enforcement. And the global mobility leader is not going to know everything in someone's past because, frankly, it might not have been disclosed. And so I think that, if global mobility leaders are thinking about what's the communication I need to have to my immigration program, I think it really is to have, a holistic view on travel. And especially if you're requiring employees to travel for work, to make sure that they're having their case closely reviewed by a US immigration attorney that you're partnering with, but that you really need all of your immigration program to be aware of the environment we're operating in and disclosing if there's personal travel to make sure that that's also vetted. Because if someone in your immigration program travels and gets caught up with visa stamping, administrative processing, the inability to re-enter the US, obviously that's going to impact their work. So more and more you want to make sure you're communicating about the environment we're operating in. And then you're going to want to know what level your program is willing to support individual guidance, because a lot of this is a case by case. And some things that may be coming up in these case by case reviews with the US immigration attorney are these interactions with law enforcement that maybe weren't previously disclosed to the immigration attorney in their past, but now, because of the heightened scrutiny of, public safety that this administration is taking, needs to be disclosed. And you get into some other representation issues. So there's a lot of things you want to be thinking through for your global mobility program, for how you're communicating and what level of support, the company is willing to give these foreign nationals when these issues pop up, because they are going to pop up.
Laura, I want to just add something that we at WR are providing for our clients. I've also done numerous of these for our university research uh, clients, and that is the so-called town hall seminar, um, meeting with HR and with the foreign national population, at least with the bigger clients, and explaining all of this.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it has created a lot of anxiety and stress, and quite frankly, knowledge is powerful, and there's so much rumor, and if you focus on the news or on TV or social media, you get the impression the whole of America's burning. I'm in Los Angeles, and yeah, there are some issues, but if you actually kind of look down and see how this is impacting LA, it's kind of honestly um minuscule. It's certain areas, there are protests, but the media have, all of the media, I'm not pointing fingers, and social media and the bloggers and the vloggers and, are creating idea that, this is World War III, and quite frankly, it's pretty much business as usual for the overwhelming, but it has created a lot of fear in the immigrant community, and that's what we need to address.
Right. I think through the town hall is great. From a You can record it for your program to get the latest and have it be the real information that your program and your people need to be supported. And that, as Bernie's mentioning, this is also really dynamic, that this is going to be reviewed. The travel bans are going to be reviewed. And so there's going to be, interpretations. There's going to be probably more policy guidance through Department of State as this unfolds. Because again, we're only 3 days in at the time of recording. So more and more details will emerge, as well as like review of countries that are subject to the travel ban. So it's going to be something that you're going to want to have a regular sort of pulse on the information and the way that you're delivering it to your program, to make sure that you're supporting your immigration program and your employees that need to be traveling for critical business need.
And I'm also gonna punt one other point, and that is advocacy. The review is gonna take place within 90 days of June 9. So there's a window here where I think people should be reaching out to their congressional liaison, explaining the potential impact of this on their companies, focusing on issues that are of national interest. And, generally speaking, the people we see coming over, even from these countries, are highly qualified professionals, doctors, researchers, scientists, that are of enormous value to the US. And come on, the overwhelming majority of people who come to the United States love this country. It's 99%. They want to live the American dream. They're not coming here to make trouble. They're coming here because they love America. They believe in our country, in our amazing country, and they're coming here to better their lives for themselves and their families. Um, yeah, of course, there are people abroad who are what I call bad guys, and that's the purpose of the screening. And I think we should spend a minute talking a little bit more about screening, social media, the new forms that are required. But how new are these forms? They've actually been in existence for some time. This has been going on perhaps a little bit more behind the scenes, but quite frankly, since 9/11, we've had extreme vetting. So this is extreme vetting. But honestly, if you come from Iran or if you come from any of these countries, you've already been through extreme vetting. So chances
Sure
are the
enough.
people who've had visas and the people who are going to be impacted, um, you know, are already pretty much the good guys.
And so, Bernie, with all these immigration headlines, do you have any, kind of wrap up thoughts to conclude our episode here on, reflecting on the travel ban and where we see this heading and how to support companies, global mobility leaders through this next challenge?
Well, I'm the eternal Pollyanna optimist. This is not travel ban one. It's not travel ban 2. It's not travel ban 3. It's travel ban 4 and 5. As I kind of said before, we've pretty much been through all of this stuff before. After 9/11, America changed. The whole dynamic changed. So for young people like yourself, this is all you've ever seen, this kind of extreme vetting. But for old guys like me, we've had the before and after situation. And yeah, they're trying to ratchet it up. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be optimistic and say that well qualified individual that has been able to get a visa will continue to be able to get a visa. But yeah, it's going to be more difficult. There's increased anxiety. But this is the message that the administration wishes to convey. No more bad guys, no more troublemaking. And I think it's going to work itself out. And I'm a believer that America has the ability to push through. This is sort of another hard time we're going through, but it's what the president and his administration is doing. And yeah, we're going to live with it. We're going to work with it. We're going to follow the rules. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to work out okay.
Thanks for those insights. Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you, Bernie, here. I think that for global mobility leaders, it's another challenge. And if anything, it's going to require more transparent communication, managing expectations for timelines for moving people in and out of the US that maybe you were used to certain timelines. We're going to have to sort of reassess whether that's still achievable. And if you're not already partnering with counsel to support your program, you need to have really great counsel to sort of help you navigate these challenging issues, because as Bernie's mentioning, there are exceptions, there are ways to navigate it, but you're going to need an attorney who is keeping you up to date and is, competent in navigating these challenges with Department of State, USCIS, all of the above. So, thanks for tuning in to the Business Immigration Benchmark. Bernie, thanks for joining me and sharing all of your expertise. We hope to catch you next week right back here on the podcast.